Season game left on Penn State's schedule.
Yep.
They're in a bit of a losing streak, two straight after Michigan put it to them pretty good on senior day. Now they got to go play a Michigan State team that is looking pretty good after what they did to Ohio State, and they have a lot to play for. They can get into the Big Ten title game with a win. It's Saturday, East Lansing,
Yep.
3:30 kick. And at James Franklin's news conference today, he talked about the offensive line issues. I asked him about the left tackle spot, and he is aware of how physically challenged they are up front, and it was a factor against Michigan, and it looks like it's going to be a factor against Michigan State.
Yeah, I would think so. I think that anytime you're changing tackle personnel, he claimed today that it was matchup related. I mean, it was the fourth quarter. It was a matchup related. There was no good
it was matchup
there.
related.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was no good matchup to be found, and when
Yeah.
you're still trying to piece that stuff together this late in the season, it's not going to get any better. You're going to have to live with it. I think Michigan had a really good game plan that Michigan State can copy this weekend.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a struggle. I don't think there's any question about that from the offensive line on out.
Yeah, I thought it was curious towards the end of his news conference, Greg, that he talked about the issues, and he's referenced the issues and the depth and all that stuff all year. But then he was asked very late a question, and I'm paraphrasing, but James kind of made it sound like he does feel like his team and his vision for the team is on schedule. I thought it was curious that he said that, given the team has struggled mightily in losses. They're 0-7 against Northwestern, Michigan State, and Ohio State combined in 2 years. Did that surprise you?
Yeah, it did. I think when he says on schedule, it maybe they are, in the sense that they're recruiting players that they need to take that next step. But on the field, it's just hard to see it. I mean, it just really is hard to find, proof that these guys have advanced. He talked about the fact that they have more wins at this time, this year than they had last year. That's just how the schedule's set up. I mean, seriously, that's what it comes down to. It's it's how the schedule's set up. They, have just not shown an ability to win close games outside of the Maryland game, and Maryland is what it is, and it's just difficult to see. You can sort of sometimes see progress being made, but not a lot and not very much of it.
Also, I thought it was a little bit interesting, Greg. You can tell, or I could tell, I thought, that James Franklin is pretty bugged and upset about the timeout issue. Penn State, and he's the one calling the timeouts. Just not great clock management.
Yeah.
They burn them for strange reasons when they're not necessary.
Yep.
They don't have them at the end of the game sometime, or they don't call them at the right time. And he made it sound like this is something that's only new to him, and that in the other 5 years he's been with his staff, it hasn't been a problem. He said he's going to get it cleared up. I'll be curious to see if he can.
Yeah, me too. There were issues last year as well, so this isn't the first year that James has been with this group that things have been problematic. I mean, sometimes it is. Sometimes they'll have 12 guys on the field. They won't have someone covered in the slot. Things of that nature, just mistakes mentally that make them force them to use timeouts. It still reflects on coaches. He talks about the young players making those mistakes. Probably true, but it comes down to coaching, and you can't. Personnel and too many guys on the field, that's just a sign of a badly coached football team. And again, this isn't the first time that's happened either.
One last thing, the kicking game has been a problem all year.
Yeah.
2 kick return scores, Greg. A big return late by Michigan that set up really their clinching score. I remember in last year's game against Michigan State opened the game at Beaver Stadium with a kick return touchdown. What was your take on what James had to say when he was asked, or when he just talked in general, about some of the problems the kicking game has faced?
It just sort of is what it is at this point. I don't think there's any fixing it. He can talk about kick location and hang time and getting in the lanes and all this stuff he talks about, but at the end of the day, it's just not good enough, and it hasn't been good enough for a year and a half now. I mean, you can't, outside of a couple occasions, it's just there's always lanes there, and they're not always hit necessarily, but almost every kickoff there's a lane where you can see it, setting up, and we can see it since we're up top. And sometimes they hit it, sometimes they don't. But at the end of the day, it just hasn't been good. And whether it's kick location, whether it's coverage or whatever it is, it's not good enough.
One last thing I think it's important to note: Connor Cook, the Michigan State quarterback, didn't play against Ohio State. He's got a sprained shoulder. Mark D'Antonio said Tuesday that it likely will be a game time decision for him. They didn't need him against Ohio State. I have a funny feeling that they'll be just fine without him against Penn State. And despite the uncertainty of Cook's status, I saw somewhere Michigan State, has opened up as an 11-point favorite.
Yeah, and they should be.